All right, welcome Florida percussionists or anyone who happened to click on this video. Today we're going to be talking about number 10 from the Portraits in Rhythm Cirone book. It's on almost every state's audition list this year. It's really proven the test of time. It was originally published in 1966 and it is still extremely widely used today. With this particular one, he does have just a quick little line at the top of this etude where he says 3 beats to a measure should be felt, so you're not really counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? You're kind of feeling it more like triplets, like 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, right? And then he also says that the dotted 16th and the 32nd note rhythm sounds different from the triplets. So this is a classic test in snare drum etudes, snare drum music in general, is can you differentiate the tight, more clipped spacing of this rhythm from the little bit more rounded sort of feel of the triplet rhythm. So if I were to kind of get rid of that middle note in the triplet versus the middle 2 notes of the 32nd note, it has a little bit of difference, and you really do want to take care to maximize the mathematical precision of your rhythm in this one, okay? So looking at the piece, I would use what I call a natural sticking, where the right hand is playing all of the 8th notes for the first few bars there. Everything that is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, if you're counting it that way, those are all on the right hand, and all of the filling in 16th notes, so all the ands, if you're counting it that way, are on the left hand. So that first measure would look like this. As opposed to a more alternating sticking would look something like this. Nothing's wrong with that, but it's going to be a little bit harder to play evenly. And again, for an audition etude, you really want to show off how much control and kind of command of the instrument you have. And they're usually going to be listening behind a screen, so they're going to hear any little inconsistencies in the hands, and you just want to avoid that problem altogether by keeping the right hand moving the whole time. The first tricky spot really is the third line, where you have suddenly a drop to pianissimo, and you have that tricky rhythm that we were talking about just a moment ago. You could even practice this as an exercise, working on other things like doubles, getting rid of those middle 2 notes like this. So I'm playing what sometimes people call an inverted roll, where it's just a double stroke roll, but I'm starting with 1 tap on my right hand and then doing a bunch of doubles. And that kind of gives you a feel for the flavor of the rhythm. I'm kind of ghosting my left hand and just playing my right hand a little bit louder. That gives me a better idea of what I want the rhythm to sound like if I fill it in at first and kind of accent the full rhythm, and then I get rid of it, and then I do the right sticking. So that's a way you can kind of build up to the rhythm, knowing that you're doing the right spacing and not just kind of sludging it. So I'll play it 2 swung and kind of lazy and logy feeling, and then I'll play it maybe even exaggerated tight, so you can feel a real difference in that way it makes the music sound. So here's the open version of that third line. Versus the much more tight, correct way. Something like that, okay? Now we have what we call staggered dynamics in this piece, where there's not really a lot of crescendos. There's a couple crescendos, but there's not really a lot of big shapes. It's much more like blocks of sounds. So you're mezzo forte, and then suddenly pianissimo, and then suddenly piano, and then suddenly mezzo forte, and so on. So you want to make those changes extremely clear and exactly in the right spot. This is an old word, but we used to say don't telegraph the dynamic. I don't know if anyone knows what that means, but basically it's where you kind of give it away before you actually get there. So you kind of ease into the louder dynamic, and you don't make it very sharp where it happens. You want to make it very sharp right on the downbeat of the 4th line. That's the first note that's louder. You don't kind of lead into it at the end of the 3rd line. Now in that mezzo forte measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, measure 8, I would try this sticking. So you don't have to do this by any means, but give it a try and I think it might give you a little bit more consistency with keeping that rhythm solid. So I'm going to do the first iteration, the first version, the normal way I have, right, left, right, okay, where the grace note of the flam falls on the left hand. So again, for clarity, right, right, left, right. However, after that, from the third eighth note on, I'm going to play right, left, left. So that would look like this, slowed down. So left, left for the main note there. The reason I'm going to do that is that sets me up for the next bar. So doing that sticking of right, left, 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 and then continuing into the forte bar, that allows me to squeeze that grace note, that rough, those two grace notes in the space, which is extremely small, right? It's very, very quick, and you really are just like coming right off the head, pretty much as quick as you can, and trying to go seems way too hard for a high school etude. It's too hard for me, so I would definitely stick with that right, left, left. Or if you prefer to put your grace notes on the left hand, obviously you could go left, right, right. You know, if you want to put the grace notes on the left hand, that's totally cool too. You just flip it. So you drop right down to piano and you have your first smooth crescendo. And I want this to make a pretty noticeable change in feel from the strict rhythm to suddenly more open, one lolly two on the triplet. Right away has a character change in that rhythm. So we want to really, really hear that. And this is the first time in this measure, forte measure, where you really have those two back to back, the triplets and then the 32nd notes. So this is a good opportunity to show off how consistent you can be even when they're right next to each other. So for example, that was not correct. That was where I had that sort of logy, triplety feel the whole time. Listen again. That's going to be the easy thing to do. The right thing to do is going to be to keep that mathematical rhythm really precise and try to sound a little bit more like this. And again, I would stylize it even, make it a little bit too clipped in your practice probably, because in reality, what you think feels too clipped is probably going to come out just right. Finally, the Fortissimo measure. This is a pretty interesting way that he's written these grace notes. So I pretty much just turn these into rhythms after it gets to 2. You know, the 2 is just another rough. Then I kind of think, that's what I think. So like 1 and a 2, 3 is sort of the rhythm, and then I'm on the andas getting doubles. So, and then for that 6 grace notes in a row, I'm pretty much treating that as a 7-stroke roll. So you can kind of practice just your 7-stroke rolls to make sure those are nice and crisp and clear. We actually do want to hear all 6. It's not one of those. Make sure you're not trying to be clever. The forte rolls, starting in the next line, I would do 7 strokes in this roll. So that just kind of feels good for me. And best advice I can give you is don't overthink it. If you try and like time 7 over 6, it's going to be a little bit tricky. But if you just think left, right, and you just kind of move a little bit faster than 6, so you can start with 6. And then just up it by 1 to get that 7th extra stroke in there. It just kind of fills it out. Then on these 8th notes, I would actually do a 3, a triple. Just because, again, the 16th note speed only with 2 does seem a little unsatisfying to me. It feels a little too grainy and open. I want it to have a little bit more filled out sound. So I'm going to put a 3rd stroke in there. And then for that dotted half roll, it's just 7 plus 7, right? So again, don't overthink it. Just kind of feel right, left, right, 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 boom, okay? Moving on, the next measure with all these flams is pretty cool. I would probably do a flam tap sticking for all of these. So for me, it just kind of feels and sounds better to start with the left on each group. So left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. So I can kind of lead to the end like that. So something like this. and so on, right? The next line does take some quick hands. So here you have a couple different options. You could take the safe route and just do doubles. So that would be something like this. And those should always come out, you know, relatively clean because you're not working super hard. However, why not go for gold and try and single it, right? Even if you don't play it super clean yet, I think you'll get better trying to practice it with singles. So I would at least try it with singles for now. And if as you get closer, you decide, you know what, I'm just not very consistent, you got to go with what's going to give you the best chance at nailing it. And so you might decide that it is in fact doubles. But I would say the doubles are easier at first, but if you put enough time in, the singles have a higher ceiling. You can get those to sound better. However, it's not a given that they do because it is very quick. So just something to think about there. You know, a little bit of a trade-off between singles and doubles. Both work. You got to make the right call for yourself. I can't tell you what is going to be best for you. Now, this pianissimo line is really probably my favorite spot. It's really cool. But here's where it has kind of everything all at once. We have those, you know, tricky rhythms next to the triplets. We have accents, and it's pianissimo, so it's very soft. That takes a lot of control. And it's at the end of the piece, so you've already been playing, your hands are a little bit tired, maybe your brain's kind of fried from focusing for 45 seconds, because that's about all we can focus for nowadays. So when you get there, you want to really take care of all those rhythms, and you might have to practice this line the most out of the whole piece, because you want to end strong. You want to really leave no doubts in their mind. If you nail this second to last line, and then you really end strong, I think everyone's going to love that performance and it's going to stick out in the judge's mind. Speaking of the end, to make it really strong, I usually don't play in the center very often, but I do use it as an effect. And here in the very last 1, 2, 3, 4 notes, I will go right to the center and really try and get a punchy, aggressive, final sort of sound. So in general, snare drum solos should be exciting, right? Definitely the end. Almost all of the solos in this book, from what I've seen, a lot of them anyway, do have this big exciting ending. So go ahead and embrace that. Go right for the center. And it's fine. If you've made great sounds the whole time and you make a really aggressive punchy sound on the really aggressive punchy ending, I think that's appropriate. I don't think anyone's going to say, it was too punchy for me. So that's what I would do. That kind of gives you at least a rough start on this. There's obviously more detail I could talk about, but you know, that's the most important stuff of really getting those dynamics terraced, really getting those rhythms as mathematically true as you can throughout, and getting those grace notes all cleaned up. Those are going to be really what I think sets apart most people. And of course, the ending with all those accents, staying really nimble and clear through all of that. So this is a great one. You know, this book, like I said, is filled with great ones. So if you don't have a copy already, pick it up. Get started on number 10. Thanks.